We're just 1 week away from the premiere of Moon Knight, and in this video, we're going to take a look at some of the books in the market, check the prices, and see if we can make any predictions. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle Haas. That is right, we are just 1 week away from the premiere of Moon Knight, and in this video, I thought it would be appropriate to sort of check the pulse of the market and see where we're at with all of the books leading into Moon Knight, or at least some of the main books and the main keys that people have been going after, and see if we can use this video as sort of a timestamp to check where the prices and the values of the books are today, and then maybe like sometime in the middle of the show or maybe after the show, we can kind of check back in on the prices and see kind of where the market has been, moving in accordance to Disney Plus shows and Marvel properties now that we're in 2022, as opposed to 2021 when everybody went crazy from week to week. But before I get into the books, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, helps support the channel, doing all those things, I would appreciate it. But let us get into this video here today. And for me, I think it's a really interesting place that we're in as far as the market is concerned. Even though the Moon Knight books have been hot, especially coming off of the heels of the Super Bowl trailer, I would say that, in this last week or two, people have really been kind of looking elsewhere as far as like the flurry of books that have, gone up in the market. I mean, we've seen, a few of the things in the Miss Marvel trailer that people got really, really excited about. Of course, yesterday we got that, explosion of the new Avengers number 40 book. And then there's been other books that have really heated up. And some of the Moon Knight spec books, sort of saw their heyday with the trailer and now are kind of flying under the radar, even though we have this show just a week out from now. So let's kind of take a look at some of the books and talk about them and see if we can make any comparisons to, what we saw with kind of the Hawkeye stuff. Because one thing I thought was really interesting about, Hawkeye as the Disney Plus show is that, we didn't feel the same sort of fervor week to week with the books that were related to Hawkeye, but we did see some books maintain, new values and new floors, and we did see other books actually did get extremely hot in the market and have been hot since due to, say, a surprise reveal like a Kingpin is something that I'm sort of thinking about for Hawkeye. So in this video right here, let's kind of go through some of the Moon Knight books and talk about them. And of course, the first one we have to talk about is this one right here, Werewolf by Night, number 32. And what is the significance of this? Well, you guys know this is the first appearance of the character of Moon Knight. Now, this is a book that I feel like is not going to really have an explosion, so to speak. And I actually think that that's probably a good thing for a book like this. I mean, this is, by all accounts, a mega key for the most part. And so I actually do think that, you wouldn't want to see too much volatility for a book like this, especially if you're someone who actually does love this book and does, want to own it in your collection. I think really what we should be looking for the values of a book like this is just to make sure that we're maintaining kind of a floor and a general fair market value for this one here. So actually, let's pull up the GPA analysis. And this one I think is really interesting to talk about because what we're seeing here with this book is I see at the high grade a lot of opportunity for people to jump on this book, and a lot of the prices have been going down at that high grade. Yet at the low grade, we see a lot of the prices going up, and I think that's because there are people who are excited about Moon Knight and they just want to get their hands on the book. They're okay getting those 3.0s and those 4.0s, so those prices at the low grade are very, very competitive. And then at the high grade, people aren't willing to take that risk. They're a little bit skeptical of Moon Knight as a character. So here we can see here at the 9.4 grade, we can see the 12-month average is around $11,000, yet the 90-day moving is only around $9,700, and the last sale you can see right here, $8,889. Actually, it's really interesting because when I did my book or when I did my video about this Moon Knight book, and if it was the time to buy, I was comparing it to like Giant Size X-Men number 1 and Incredible Hulk and 181 and those types of books. And what I determined was, if you're buying this book at the $10,000 level, I think you're overpaying. But if you're someone who, let's say you bought it at the $8,800 range for this last sale at the 9.4 grade, I actually think you're probably paying in line to where you want to be for a book like this. So you can see 9.2, we got some red here at the 90 day, selling 7,600 as opposed to the 1 year, which was 7,800. Here at the 9.0, we see again another little drop off, 5,600 as opposed to 5,800. And then here at the 8.5, another little drop off, 41 as opposed to 43. between the 90-day and the 1 year. But then if we go down here to sort of the lower grades, we can see things start to change around the 6.0 and the 5.5. We can see actually an upward movement. So 2290 for the 6.0 as opposed to 1990 for the 1 year. And then down here again at the bottom at the 4.0, we can see 1524 at the 90-day moving average and 1427 as the 1 year. Last sale at the 4.0 was actually $1,800. So a very interesting book to think about as far as like time stamping the values for this thing, where we see it getting very, very competitive at the low grade and not so competitive at the high grade, which is actually kind of squishing the value range for a book like this. But, in my personal opinion, I mean, it's kind of hard to say, hey, yeah, you should spend $10,000 on a book. But, I do think that if you're buying this at the high grade at the current prices, you might be able to find yourself a good opportunity. Whereas at the low grade, I think that it is a little bit inflated and we could see, kind of an inverse correction after the show. All right, another interesting book to talk about is, of course, this one right here, Moon Knight #1 from 1980. And this, of course, is the first appearance of Khonshu, first appearance of the Bushman. Also, it is the origin of Moon Knight. And this has definitely been one of the hottest books in the market for quite some time. But actually, if we're looking at the GPA and we're really looking at the last handful of sales that came out last month or so, like you can see here, GPA has the 90-day average as 946 being higher than that of the 12-month average. But if we really dig into the numbers and we look at sort of the last, like say 10 sales or so, we actually see this book not selling at that 90-day average. You can see right here, let's just take the month of March. If we just kind of highlight these numbers, I mean, I'm definitely seeing this book starting to sell a little bit less than that of which, it suggests at 946. I mean, we're seeing a lot of numbers that are like 800, 761, 860, 830, 755. So I would suspect that even if the show is successful, say a month from now or two months from now, we're going to see that 90-day moving average correct, and we're going to see kind of lower numbers overall. We can see earlier in the year a lot more 4-digit numbers. There are a lot more, thousands, 1200s, things like that. But I really do think that this is going to be a book that, probably is going to have that correction overall. I mean, I still think it's a really great book, but the problem with this one is that there's just too many on the census. Like if we go over here, we can see at the 9.8 grade, there's 946. So basically 1,000 books. And, you're really just hoping like that there's going to be, say, 1,000 diehard Moon Knight fans that are going to be unwilling to sell their copy of this book in the 9.8 grade. There's also a lot of raw copies out there that are high grade, probably a bunch of people still submitting their books to CGC. So this one is probably going to be tough to keep at a high floor overall. But I do think that if the show is successful, this is going to be that go-to collector's book for a lot of people who want to own something Moon Knight but can't afford the Werewolf by Night 32. All right, the next book we got to talk about is an interesting one, and one that I feel like has really, been forgotten about, in the plethora of Moon Knight books that are out there in the market. And this one, of course, is Marvel Spotlight number 28 for Moon Knight. This would be known as Moon Knight's first solo story. Maybe you want to make the argument that it's, his first title kind of series book. I mean, it's the first time you see Moon Knight in the title, although this is the Marvel Spotlight title. So I don't really know if collectors value it that way, but it is a very, very cool cover, a very cool book. And this is one of those books that, really had been one that was hot for quite some time, and I think really fell off, especially in comparison to the Moon Knight #1 book. So if we dig into the GPA here, we can see that basically outside of the 9.8 grade, which does have, the last sale setting the record high for this. So in March here, we got a $4,000 sale at the 9.8 grade. Generally speaking, when you go down the list here, 9.6 you see red, 9.4 you see red, 9.2 you see red, 9.0 you see red, and this is in comparison even to in most cases when we look at the last sale. Generally speaking, the trending average has been higher than that of the last sale, and that one is also going down. But much like the Werewolf by Night 32 one, what do you notice here at the sort of mid to lower grades? Well, you start to see a lot more green overall. So I do think it is interesting that with some of these books like Werewolf by Night 32 and this one right here, it's really the risk factor that people are afraid to pay that really high dollar amount for the high grade versions of this book, yet they're more willing to kind of roll the dice on the lower grade versions of this thing. So I do think that, if you're out there and you're someone who really does believe in a certain book, if you go for that high grade, I think the inverse correction is going to happen where if Moon Knight ends up being a successful show, we're going to see a lot of these high grade numbers really start to shoot up. All right, the next book here that I think is interesting to talk about is Moon Knight #1 from 2014, written by Warren Ellis. And this would be the first appearance of of Mr. Knight. Now, we already got, kind of that tease and that poster and some of the images in the trailer that, Moon Knight is going to be playing kind of the Mr. Knight persona. But I really do think that this is one of those books that, might not move as much during the show like it did, say, when we got the trailer. Because if we're thinking about what happened with Hawkeye and we look at some of the modern books that moved in that, especially the ones associated with the Matt Fraction run and associated with Kate Bishop, what we generally saw was like maybe we saw a higher volume of sales, but we didn't quite see, new record high prices for those books because simply there's just too many copies out there in the market. And this one right here, maybe has the second and third printings that have a little bit shorter of a supply, and those ones can maybe hit new numbers. But we can see the 9.8s already kind of trending downward, at least in the 90-day, although the last sale was, the record high sale. So this one will be really interesting to think about, where it sits in the market. When we got that trailer back in January, you see a lot of $300 numbers. And then here, it's a little more volatile. People are unsure what to be charging this thing. We see a $200 sale here, a $200 sale here, a $400 sale here, a $375, a $400. So this one I think is really interesting to think about, like, okay, where will the prices settle for a book like this, and how involved will Mr. Knight be in the storyline? All right, and the last book I want to highlight right here is actually going to be Marvel Spotlight number 2, first appearance of Werewolf by Night. Now, there's actually a lot of other Moon Knight books that we could talk about, but I didn't want the video to be too long. I mean, maybe we can, touch on some of the more spec-ish stuff if you guys would like to hear me talk about it. But one thing that I thought was interesting about this book is that, when I think back to Hawkeye and I think about, ASM number 50, first appearance of Kingpin, that seemed to be the book that gained the most traction in its values coming off of the Hawkeye show. Because, when we think about the Hawkeye books, and all the spec stuff that was going into the show, we already knew Hawkeye was going to be in it. We already knew Kate Bishop and the Matt Fraction books were going to be, associated with the show. So, the values for those things didn't have that White Vision, Agatha Harkness skyrocketing moment. So what, type of books coming off of the Moon Knight show are going to have that, it was Agatha all along effect. And so for me, when I think about who the surprise appearance could be in the show, I'm definitely thinking Werewolf by Night might be that character, because we're presumably going to be getting Gael Garcia Bernal playing this character, and later on this year we're going to be getting that Halloween special with Werewolf by Night in it. So it would make sense to introduce him in the Moon Knight show. So this is a book that I'm really interested to see where it sits, after we get this reveal, or if we get this reveal, where the numbers could be for this thing. So definitely a book that has been spec'd on pretty hard, but one that hasn't really been moving as much in the market. So we can see here at the 9.4 grade, we see the 90-day moving a little bit lower than where it was, say, a year ago, 4,500 to 4,200. Last sale right in line with that. Down here at the 8.5, we can see $1,100 at the 90-day moving compared to $1,200 for the 1 year. And then down here at the mid-grade level, we can see the 90-day moving is actually moving above the 1 year average, simply due to the fact that I think more people are willing to spend, say, $500 on a book as opposed to $4,000. So people are willing to kind of hedge their bet a little bit, maybe get the foot in the door for a mid-range book, but not go for broke at the high grade. And that makes a lot of sense for a book like this. I really do think that if we get this character, this could be the one that really does take the biggest jump in the market, maybe 2-3x. Who knows what it really could be. Like if I'm looking at the values of that book and comparing it to other characters that came out around that time, say Tomb of Dracula 10 First Blade, or even the Werewolf by Night 32 book itself, and I think about the potential ceiling values for those books, I feel like Werewolf by or Marvel Spotlight 2 has a lot of room to grow. Anyways, that is all for this video. We are just 1 week away from Moon Knight. Let me know what you guys think. Are you guys excited about the show? Are there other books you've been specking on? Should I make more videos looking over the spec books for Moon Knight? Let me know in the comments. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I'll see you in the next video.